Here in our country, the provincial election campaign kicks off officially tomorrow in British Columbia. There is a lot of heat in this race already. The BC Liberals have been in power for 16 years. Think about that. Since 2001, first under Premier Gordon Campbell and then under the current Premier, Christy Clark. That, by the way, is 5,810 days as of Tuesday. Michael Geoghegan is a political analyst specializing in BC politics, coming to us today from Victoria on the island. Michael, can Christy Clark do it?
Well, I think a lot of people are expecting that the BC Liberals will win. They've got a solid economic track record. And so I think the default position is, yeah, they're going to win. But there's also a sense of unease because how much are people paying attention to a provincial election campaign while we've got so much in the way of media attention on what's happening in Washington? And second of all, one of the issues that's had some saliency is this idea that there's been a pay to play in terms of BC politics and the government, and that seems to have had some traction. On the other hand, we also have a Green Party that is headed to 19% in the polls. It's cutting into NDP support as well as Liberal support. That's a real wild card.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this whole issue of political donations in British Columbia. And as you know, it's a bit of a wild west in the province in terms of what companies are able to do and donate. That doesn't seem to have had a major drag anyway on the BC Liberals.
Well, the Liberals are polling in second place right now, but they are close behind the NDP, which are currently polling in first place. But yeah, it's probably had some impact. It might have freed up some votes that otherwise would have been Liberal to actually go to the Greens. People who wouldn't bring themselves to vote NDP that were Liberal voters. So what we certainly know is that in terms of, I think, issues that people are talking about, that certainly is one that, to the extent anyone's paying attention to BC politics right now, even in BC, that's certainly one of the issues that people are talking about around the water cooler.
So this is going to be a long campaign stretching into May. And you remember last time around, everybody thought Adrian Dix of the NDP was going to be the next premier. And of course, it did not happen. The comeback kid, Christy Clark, becoming the premier once again. Almost as if people began to pay closer and closer attention. Some stumbles by the NDP at that time. They seemed like they had it in the can and they started to act like it. And then it all kind of went sideways for them. What are we hearing from John Horgan this time around to try and make sure that doesn't happen again?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to be another Kinder surprise, but as happened with Adrian Dix. What we've seen from the NDP is actually interesting announcement. They're going to get rid of bridge tolls, and for people living in the Lower Mainland, those tolls can add up to over $1,000 a year. The NDP is saying those tolls are gone. They're saying they're going to get rid of MSP, Medical Services Plan premiums. They're going to put a freeze on BC hydro rates. So they're definitely trying to appeal to the average voter's pocketbook. That although our taxes are relatively low in BC, there's a lot in the way of fees and other things that do eat into that take-home pay.
One final thing, and you touched on this a moment ago, Michael, this notion of sort of political overload coming from Washington and Donald Trump, but also Justin Trudeau taking up a lot of the political oxygen in the room nowadays as well, federally, and that there just might be some political fatigue in British Columbia nowadays in terms of people not necessarily all that upset at Christy Clark and therefore maybe hers to lose.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people's thinking are at. I think people, even though we could have a Liberal government, we could have an NDP government, we could have a minority government with the Greens holding the balance of power. I think this is going to be a sleeper election, which could have a very surprising result at the end. So I know I'm going to be paying attention, but yeah, I would say a lot more British Columbians are interested to see what the federal Liberals are rolling out in terms of marijuana legalization right now than they are in the provincial election campaign. So it's tough to get folks focused on that topic.
There we go. That bill expected to be tabled on Thursday, as you know. Thanks for this, Michael. We'll be following the election, too. Talking to you again in the weeks ahead, no doubt.
Thank you.